Welcome back, everybody, to the We're not restarting everything. We get it. We had some audio problems. We'll get them sorted out and underway. And the game, I believe, has been paused in the background, so we aren't missing any action. We want to make sure we get everything we possibly can, and also make sure the audio is less scuffed as it possibly can be. First day problems. It is what it is. Yeah. We'll just call this season 1 now at this point, right? We'll just say it's a whole new season, whole new set of problems. That'll be solved by week 2, maybe 3, Dallas.
It was already the first season. We didn't do a season 0 like we did for Rocket League. It's the second split of the first season. So it's still correct no matter what. However, we really want to break it down. But all things considered, yeah, everything should be go ahead and fixed up. If anything's a problem, go ahead and let us know. We'll see the chat. Trust. I know Scott at least always has that thing pulled up.
I don't have it up right now.
That is surprising.
Accusations right now.
Did you get a counseling for that? Did somebody,
I did. Yeah. I guess.
Is that something you did over Christmas? Is that a gift?
Yeah. Thankfully, the gift of no longer caring what anyone has to say. You know?
That is honestly, it's a beautiful one.
That's probably the best gift you can possibly receive, not having to rely on other people.
Quite frankly,
that's pretty. Yeah, it is.
But if you are going to care, obviously, we cannot care as much as we want because there's no stakes on the line here. Obviously, our reputation, our jobs, maybe, but the game, we're just here to talk about it. It's the players who are stressing out right now because obviously the first round is very important. And well, as things start to get underway here, they got to win it, especially in something like Lotus. Talk about the Outlaw now and this power on that second round. You're going to go ahead and make sure to have that thing purchased up. As much as we talk about it, realistically, it may not even be bought. We're probably stressing it out and going ahead and talk about it so much for nothing. But, hey, we'll get around to it and we'll see whether or not it gets brought in here.
First round gets started off on a very slow foot for the side of Florida Blue. They do go for an interesting default for a pistol round. One player off over towards A main, towards the lobby side, testing off towards Trunk. A firefight off towards Mound as the 3 players that were prowling up initially from Florida Blue, one in towards B, were putting the pressure on towards Oklahoma, who take the first loss of this round, overextending out towards Mound, over towards Door itself, and paying the price because of it.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, first round getting things out of the way here, you got to make sure to kind of play these things a little more close, a little more kind of countery CQB, but even more so it comes down to these sites and how you really want to be playing these things out. Already over there towards Mound, that's going to be your one angle with that ghost, with that sheriff, where you're going to see these guys line up 9 times out of 10 over and over and over again. But even more so, you want to be towards the C site more times now because that Mound control can actually translate to some site control as well because as you can see, this main C lobby area is so massive now. It used to be almost purely constricted. Even then, more so you had to plant towards the middle, but even then you can play towards the outside now, get that plant down, and play for a much more safe post plant there, heading there back towards that door, as you can see going away right here.
A single piece of destructive utility, a molly, anything of the sort would have cut down all of the approach from the attacking side. Now with a wider range there, it's a bit easier to circumvent and get around the dangers and difficulties that are there that are set up from the defense. Now, not an issue in the pistol round, but seemingly an issue for the defense. Oklahoma will bite the first L of this series, losing that first round almost purely at the hands of Halibel. A 4K in the very first, and Stephen Hawking joining in for that 5th to close out for all 5 kills. And Oklahoma only finding 1 in the hands of their Viper isn't the best look for a pistol, but they'll make up for it in the 3rd. And we're not even seeing the fancy smashy sniper come out here in the 2nd round down.
I mean, it's the one on the attacking side. If there was anybody we were going to see go for that, it would be a Chamber on that 2nd round of the defense, but that's just not the case here because obviously Oklahoma didn't end up going ahead and winning that thing out. Instead, they got to hold these angles a little more aggressively. They're going to look to kind of play more collectively on that B site, look for a stretch towards A with that Rays playing Rome. But honestly, it's a good raid here from Florida. It's well played. They know that C site's already been opened. It's already been successful before. Go ahead, double down on it when you have the better guns to work with. The only thing you're not going to be carrying over is probably that Stinger because the Bulldog, the Spectres, you want that thing to transition into the next.
Spike planted. Spike does go down. It's Halibel with 17 HP on site. Plenty of coverage from the 3 remaining teammates around them. And with C-Site completely under control, it's the 2 remaining players for Oklahoma forced to find a route back in to this objective. Maybe if not just to take down a couple weapons and make this round pricier than it is for the side of Florida Blue, because 1 weapon lost, not that bad. 2 to 3 is what they're looking for as a margin of error in the positive direction for Oklahoma. Snakebite goes out to create some space. Aiko close right, not too far away. Halibel having been forced to fall back will rotate in towards defender spawn. Fizz aggresses into tricks, and Aiko will make sure that Civ lives no longer as 2nd round falls to Florida Blue as expected.
Well played there. Going ahead, realizing these health pools, understanding who can swing, who can't in that kind of situation to make sure you can hold on to as much as possible. You saw the Omen, you saw the Viper both being relatively low in that last encounter, and you would just go ahead and say, play it safe, don't really overextend here, let me take care of that. Because obviously, Echo being that duelist, you're expecting, especially on the attacking side, to already be in that 5-0 spot that Halibel's sitting in. But we're not complaining if an Omen's top fragging here. We're going to let that go ahead and ride out for as long as possible because maybe Echo's a little bit more of a rifle player. Maybe he starts to excel with those Phantoms in hand, with those Vandal shots going ahead and getting popped out. But even then more so, it doesn't matter where we see these accelerations. We got to see where they're being taken place in terms of the match. And honestly, they're not going towards A because, once again, a solid start, a nice little hold, a lot of expenditure of utility there going towards the A main that nobody's going to extend that every single time at the start of a round. Florida Blue, even on a full buy round at this point, I doubt they're going to actually go for it. So props to them to go ahead, having that discipline and just slowing things down to realize, okay, I need to know when to really strike. And it's going to be C again.
Yeah, and Benji is up close and personal, and they're aware of that. They sent out the Tasmanian Tiger, but with no guiding light behind it, Benji was able to just stand face and take down the opposing players pressuring them. Only a 1-for-1 trade or one and done deal so far. Benji able to get out of there mostly unscathed in the process, but there was damage dealt, and that will force the regrowth to be used by Florida Blue and then to recalculate how they want to transition forward. Because C-Site has obviously shown itself to be defended. Maybe you transition over through door, work your way into B, but even if you wanted to, A site with the quick rotate in on that side would have plenty of coverage, and they just want C, and it is not going to hit for them this time around. Tommy Gun and Benji, good for one apiece. Benji getting their second. They will fall, but Tommy Gun gets the avenging frag, leaving just Halibel very much so cut off from the flank, trying their best, does secure Civ, but with 3 more players they have to get through in 10 seconds remaining. This round seems impossible, and Oklahoma plays smart and wise, holding back, not going for too much aggression, and just closing it out with Polar.
Difficult to say the least, but even more so expected on the side of Oklahoma to be winning out that third round. We don't see these weird 1-1 splits anymore because obviously you're not really going to be buying up anymore because you're stressed out that there's going to be a gun to go ahead and one-shot you. It's that passive impact of at least having that option now inside the game. With the sniper being a lot more of a passive thing, I would have said an SMG would have been a little more fun to introduce, but hey, it is what it is. At the end of the day, we're going to be seeing rifles on round 3 regardless, and every single player is going ahead and opting for one of those, whether it be half shield, whether it be full armor. You don't care. You need the gun more than anything else. And honestly, the use build, sure, is pretty important off the back. But we're going to see Oklahoma, once again, just using a lot of it towards his A main side. Every single time when you know that Florida Blue, they don't care about that anymore. They chalked that. They said this is a 2-site map. A is just there for illusion. And we're going to go for B or C and try to take that fight initially.
B is such a difficult objective on this map to actually take in control as well, which is I think why we see Florida Blue only using the route to B as a pivot point in through Mound to keep the players aggressing and Arch just as far back as they can. And they maybe should have done that a little bit more effectively. Benji works their way through Mound, worms their way through attacker spawn, and knocks the player down a peg. They do lose another teammate in the process. They're raised, but Oklahoma, I still think, gets a very positive transition on attack, considering the Vipers off the board here, Dallas. There is no defensive utility that can really help you out, bar that KJ, and that KJ is going to be very hesitant to step into that site because they're the one lonesome player lagging behind inside of B main, waiting for the rest of the team to engage first.
I mean, obviously, just going to be holding things back for maybe a late lurk. Because if that post point goes away, you have so much control there towards Mound. You don't really need that KJ utility there. It's just a lot more information that you're looking for out of that player specifically. But even then more so, if you find maybe a late lurk up towards B main, you can say, hey, this side's a little more controlled. Problem is, Pixel made that call, it seems, and the rest of the team was a little bit hesitant because there are players on site. But if you kill each and every last one of them, just go ahead and deal with that problem with your own hands. Knock them down, get the aggression, but understand that Civ and now Fade are going to be here to go ahead, coincide, find the picks. Not all of them, but pretty darn close to make that round doable. But much better yet, expensive.
There's a very good hold from Oklahoma. All things considered, they bought a lot of time, and a lot of that really comes off of how much control, how much utility they're dumping off in towards A main and trying to lock out that lobby from Florida Blue. It works, but we're seeing weaknesses on the C site, we're seeing weaknesses on B, even in rounds where we're now seeing weapons be even, whether that be the pistol round where they're arguably even, or, you know, just the prior round when rifles are in play for both sides. Oklahoma are coming up short in utility, and when the gunfights come out from Florida Blue, because they're initiating very well out the gates of these lobby entrances, these main routes, they're just cutting Oklahoma off the board. They need to play a little bit smarter, be a little bit more aware of their arches, and maybe even be a little bit more aggressive when it comes to actually engaging for those kills, because they're just stacking 4 players once again towards Trunk, which left Benji all alone on C with everyone else from Florida Blue there.
I mean, every single time we're going to see him just pushing out this C side. I mean, it's worked so many times now. You said a 3-1 lead. You don't really have anything to risk here, quite frankly. Nothing's been given up in terms of the information department on B or A. It's just been kind of an outright push when you know that space is already being given up. So, I mean, it's well played here from Florida. They have not really had to reveal anything in their hands. They've just been winning gunfights, taking C control, and it's been working every single time. On a round like this, you're expected to work again, knowing you have the rifle advantage over them. But with a couple players drop, there's only so much that can really happen here. You know, eventually, this one last player could maybe get a 3K, but we'd be screaming about that all season. So this is probably not the case.
Trick's managing to knock another player, though, off the board. At least secures that Florida Blue will have to pay for weapons up in this next round. And they don't necessarily have the credits to do so comfortably. They'll get everything up, they'll get their armor, they'll get their rifles that they want, but they're shredding the pockets thin of those 2 or 3 players that are maybe lagging behind individually when it comes to requiring those credits. And that's exactly what Oklahoma are preying on. If they get a round win here, Florida Blue would be at a point where only 2 players could buy out for the next round, forcing them into a save or forcing them to make a decision about how they want to play that one out, which then Oklahoma can take advantage of and grow this margin that currently is at a 3-round disparaging point to maybe just a single round where the game is back under control. And this half doesn't seem so distraught at the early stages of it. And they can try to surmount something going in their way when they flip themselves on over to the attacking side, where we've seen so much success so far from Florida Blue.
And my favorite part about this is understanding that, well, Florida Blue, they're also the ones taking the timeout. They kind of, I don't know whether it's a little bit of a petty one there for the likes of Oklahoma to say, take some time, figure out what's going on here. More than likely, we could read into it all day, but I think it's probably just a bathroom break for one of the players real fast to get things in and out, because knowing that already when you have a 3-round lead like this in terms of Lotus, and you haven't even had to really stretch your game plan across the entire map just yet, you're sitting pretty comfortably. It's more so just kind of the rejuvenation process here for Oklahoma to utilize these ultimates they've had and now just kind of find a way to actually get them on the board, really start nailing this thing down, find themselves some pressure, pushing that spawn, find these kind of holes that they can manipulate. I would say take it a little bit easy on the A site, quite frankly, because switch something up. We haven't really noticed that just yet. The only thing we noticed differently was Benji, instead of being over towards C site, went B, found that initial kill, but wanted to peek again and lost his life in the process.
Chamber's extremely strong on this map, Dallas, but the issue is that Chamber has to play a certain style, and you may feel a little bit more pressure to go for those aggressive peaks and use that rendezvous and try to get out of there as fast as you can, but you also kind of get a little overzealous and hunt for the second. That's what we see. It only gets them the 1, and they pay the price accordingly. And we didn't even see Florida Blue dump 5 players off over there towards A main, which is why Oklahoma are currently prowling not only 2 players there, but Spike Carrier there as well. Working their way through, moving in through door. Not a single soul within 2 objectives, really, for the side of Oklahoma's defense on that A site, but Florida don't have that information. The Tasmanian Tiger isn't there. Their Sky has just now rotated in. They need that visual acuity to see that, but with the lack of noise, they know they can get this plant down, and here it goes for Pixel. A free objective for Florida Blue, and possibly a free round if they don't start to transition quick for Oklahoma.
Problem is with this hold is you don't really see it kind of dispersed out too much. You do see that Omen back here towards main, watching the flank, but everybody else is stationed up towards that tree or on that side. Everybody's sitting on the right side of the map, so you are literally just being able to throw a straight slammer down a straight line, and you're going to find more than likely 3 of the players. With that showstopper coming through, finding no real damage, but putting that pressure on, backing players up. You know players in tree, you're going to mow them down, and it all has to come down to this Omen to hold things down. Knowing it wasn't planted for him, that's not going to be an easy hold to make for Oklahoma to get themselves a second. So a very good game plan of getting that spike down for Florida Blue, but considering that they just didn't really have all of those boxes checked for that A site just yet, and I'd say that's more so kind of a luxury, more so than an actual holdback for them, because they're saying, honestly, C's worked out so well for us that we kind of forgot how to hit A.
The default plant there is not too bad, but when you know that the side has changed, things have widened, and it's a lot easier for the defending side to extend over towards that door lobby, you may want to start planting closer on the opposing side for Halibel, who has been your best player so far and continues to show that they can frag with the best of them, which kind of just seems like a controller thing on this map half the time, but less so a Halibel thing. But we'll have to see if that holds true for the second map as well. They jump over to Ascent. Defensively for Oklahoma, they're happy with the win. This is where I said Florida Blue, we're going to start to run into a couple problems with purchases, and they'll have to start thinking twice on an individual level about what they want to bring, and they still decide to commit, which of a win here for Oklahoma, this is a guaranteed save the next round prior and could put them in really big trouble. Just a one-round lead when they had 3 just a few rounds prior.
Good shots coming through that wall. Just trying to go ahead and get whatever little signal you can on a Tommy gun there. Knowing the rest of the team is going to go ahead and be pushing through to that B site. Your Viper made the call. And you're saying, honestly, this could be a pretty good collapse here. All things considered, B's a lot more open now since attacker post plant. It look pretty darn good. Problem is, Oklahoma's already cut through so many players, and that spike never even went down. So this is just an absolute hesitation moment for Florida Blue, where you have this pressure. You have this line of scrimmage set up this time B, but what's it going to do for you, quite frankly? Almost nearly nothing to capitalize off the top of it and find the necessary kills, because Oklahoma's saying, with that hesitation, that gives us a better yet a actual moment to really manipulate once again, and that's a free hole that you presented to us to say we can take that spike once more. So 3-4 on the board. What was those weird buys going into the end of this round? Well, quite frankly, they came out of it with less than a scratch at all, because everybody's taking home rifles at the end of the day.
It's a good thing, especially Civ, who was down to 0 credits at the end of that one, desperately needed something different. Still gets the job done with the SMG, but now they have that rifle, like you said, and they're going to be plenty happy carrying this one to the next time. When Florida Blue have nothing, because they opted for it again, they're going to bite the bullet, head into this one with an eco, and pray that they can get the job done. And I'd have to expect, Dallas, that it's going to be the C-sided push once again, where Oklahoma have stacked up this time around. No longer is A where they want to play. They know that C is their proving point, their comfort ground, and they want to try to deny that as best they can, and they've done so well. 4 kills already, knock off the 5th. Tricks with the shot through the corner of that wall. And Oklahoma, barely a scratch on their record, will tie things up after a rough start against Florida Blue.
Yeah, I mean, already tying things up, looking like they are just really starting to hit their strides here. And I mean, quite frankly, obviously that's what they've needed to some degree in the course of this game. But we know it was going to come around eventually. It was really just kind of shutting down that initial C push. And those first early rounds, I mean, keep in mind, Pistol and the one after, that's already 2 rounds. So you're saying, really, the rifle rounds ever since, Oklahoma's had themselves the advantage in what we can call the real game of Valorant. So, I mean, now in a situation where Florida Blue's having to diversify their push, go to different sites on the map, start to really flex what they're made of, this is where we actually get to see this util dump towards A main actually start to surmount towards something rather than those early rounds. It was more of an insurance there, but now it feels like a necessity, because you know eventually they're going to want to go for the A side again, because they know B and C, we've done it too much. It seems like an old trick now. And quite frankly, when you haven't won it the last couple of times, that's exactly what it does.
Hatbell will be the first to pounce and strike in this round. Who else?
I've got your trail.
Stephen Hawking there behind them. Great cover, great hold from Polar. Good for 2, but a 3rd could have been there. Denied by Halibel. Regrowth needs to be used, but Florida Blue seemingly absent for it with the first death in this round, and they want to go full committal. Lockdown is in the hands of Pixel. It will be placed, and Tommy Gun's going to have their money cut out for them to try and take into this objective, and you know it. Look at Benji, operator in hand. They were going in for the play. Can they get out in time? It will be close, just barely enough. But it buys time for Florida Blue to continue to sit on this A side where we've seen them struggle on time and add into the Seekers. What else can you do? So much utility being committed here, Downs.
Yeah, I mean, already we understood the post plant, that lockdown being employed there. You're understanding that obviously there's a full commitment here from Florida Blue. Give them that, quite frankly. The one thing I think you do, if you know that Viper Spin is going ahead and trapping them all back towards the string, you heard those audibles, you move back towards the attacker spawn, roundabout them, and cut them off as soon as that round ends. Because one player's already going to die to spike, because you know that overcommittal was going to transcend not just the round, but even then go past that. And more than likely, one player would have been lost in the process. But even more so, it was the fact that Benji wasn't there for that Prowler. Because if there's anybody who can counter a Viper ultimate, well, it obviously is going to be Yoru ultimate. That man is a orbital VSAT for the Black Ops 2 days. But all things considered, you also got to look at what we have in terms of regular util. And with 2 Prowlers available from Faye, that will literally sniff out the Viper in somebody else to play off almost like a flash in a duelist, but it just wasn't used like that. Benji had an operator. He's not swinging in there with his gun, and, well, obviously you're going to play a little bit more passive in that kind of situation, opting for the save there towards the end. So an operator here for a round like this, hoping to find a little bit of a result, and you do get that initially. You cut off the KJ, but he already did his job last round, employed that lockdown. He's saying, I'm one tick closer. Sure, we're in the late stages of the first half, but we're at least up here for Florida Blue. We did our job. We just need one more to make it even.
It'd be very impressive, Dallas, if that lockdown was able to be recharged back up by the end of this half, but it seems very unlikely, especially taking a L early in this one. They need to play a little bit better going into the next, with the team is seemingly doing so. Echo will avenge the death of your KJ just moments prior, taking down Benji and securing that operator away from the opposing ends of Oklahoma's hands. And they'll go full committal here. This is a cosmic divide by Oklahoma to lock down the backside of that site. I think maybe they were expecting Florida to feel maybe too pressured to step into sight. That's not the case. They already had full control, and now you're struggling to retake your own objective because of your own utility. But Polar make it 2, knocks down a 3rd onto the site. Just Stephen Hawking will they'll remain as Trix cleans up the final bits. Polar with 12 in the first half has made a name for themselves, and Oklahoma have put themselves back into a tied straight 5-5.
So those scenarios too, obviously, where you look at the players and kind of where they were set up in that post plane. You saw nobody over there towards Mountain. You saw those initial deaths being taking place, but even more so, look at the kills that were going away. You saw defenders dying on Mound more than attackers. Their post plant was being taking place on that site, and sure, C is now a lot bigger. I mean, my duplex here in the middle of Texas, I pay $730 a month for. It's probably bigger than that, where you can plant that spike now. It's very impressive, but it's still not enough to actually make yourself at home. If that says one thing, then you'll be able to translate. But all things considered, now knowing that you have a tie game across the board, this also opens up a lot more opportunity here for Oklahoma to really get that hook, line, and sinker, really just carry through with this. This is a round where you see that they're looking pretty darn comfortable in the economy. I haven't talked about it too much because, well, it just looked pretty one-sided. Like, it seems like an uphill battle for Florida where their initial shots were working. But as this game has continued and continued, it seems like they've been hemorrhaging that a little bit more so. And this is these late stages where the rounds become a lot more important because you look at that second round advantage, and even more so, if you can't even purchase the fight for it, that makes it a lot more difficult.
I mean, just look at the way Benji was playing the first 4 or 5 rounds in comparison to what we've been seeing from them the last 3 or 4 past that. Very aggressive, ego swings, wanting the second and third kills afterwards. And now, a lot more patient, hoping for that operator shot, connecting with a headhunter, keeping a close eye on these angles and not overextending themselves, and playing for the much needed kill and then falling back to fulfill their role afterwards. It's the one thing that's really putting Florida Blue in a bit of a damper when it comes to that C site, and it only gets worse when you start to say that, hey, Benji doesn't have to just play C. They can rotate and hold that B main entrance as well, where they had 2 targets at the other end of their rifle and just couldn't connect the big boomstick to either of the targets, maybe just in between both, and they'll have to fall back. But Florida, feeling pressured, don't want B no more. They're going to move back all the way, slowly but surely, through Mound, and they want C.
Right back to it. I mean, still that same exact funnel. No matter how open it may be on the inside, that funnel, that gate is still the same as it's always been. And if you have a Viper station there, good God, you are going to hate your life. But even then more so, Florida Blue, I'm sure, is hating the result of a round like that. Whether or not win or loss and how many weapons you really cut out, so long as there was any scrounge, any crumbs of money remaining, you knew that, well, it's going to be going into a round like this. They saved in the last one, didn't have too much of an actual shot available to them. And even then, you still see a couple players kind of suffering from that, like Stephen Hawking with that Guardian, the half shield. This is going to have a full buy to take. It's just a little bit late to come on the board. But even then, the ultimate economy is also another thing that's really hurting them. They've been looking to kind of find something, some relevancy here. And they say, okay, we can get in there. We can play this. We can maybe get that 5th round. But everything afterwards, Oklahoma has their name on it. Because look at this. We're sitting in a 6-5 situation. And they have a Viper's Pit, a Showstopper, and Nightfall to go ahead and use.
Florida Blue have been baited in and tested by that C site so many times now. They start out the beginning of this series looking like a T-bone steak. You want to enjoy it very slowly, but you just scarf it down as fast as you can, and you head into the next one as soon as you can at an all-you-can-eat buffet. Now, they set up a meat grinder right at the entrance. Oklahoma are making sure no steak will go unscathed through there, and Florida Blue have just not found anything. They've got to test something out. They've got to go back to A. They've got to find something new because Oklahoma looked too darn good defending the C site, and it really just tossed the major lead that Florida Blue had gained. Showstopper out, Viper's Pit as well is in, and a lot more on the board, especially for Oklahoma, who let Civ face the danger of Florida Blue. 2 kills for Civ, 3 for Tommy Gun. The meat grinder continues to tear apart the tender flesh of Florida Blue's attack.
I mean, that wasn't even a butcher house. That was just straight up like a massive, as you said, meat grinder where you can throw the whole cow in and just processes itself. I mean, just seeing how that entire thing went, it was petrifying to look at, considering that, I mean, obviously we call the KJ nades a blender, but that was just another level. You see that obviously the Viper's Pit is there. That's one thing already deteriorating your health. Then you have a Nightfall there, a singular contact, because, well, you have the advantage here. You have all these ultimates to work with. So you're saying just throw them out. And if, even then, you've already heard the orb off. You've already heard now a second piece of utility go through. You said that's at least 2 players hit by this ultimate. They are not getting away from this. Everybody will be one shot for at least like what feels like a solid minute. You are going to be playing the most frightening game of attacker that you've ever played in your life. That's not really the case already. Florida Blue, they know what they're doing there. They try to get it done, and they just can't. Oklahoma, just easy shots to make. And with an Odin, that's a lot of bullets to shoot. Now we're back to a round 1 situation, at least on the second half now, where you're seeing that you don't have nearly as many bullets. Things are a lot more particular, and even more so, a lot more cautious because, well, you got to be close on your shots to that classic. You got to be holding these right angles, and even more so, you got to wait for these right picks to come through with the Ghost and the Sheriff that are here present on the board. And we don't see too many of those, but we also don't see too many players allocate themselves specifically to a site. We don't see a 5-man C push. We don't see a 5-man A push. We don't really see anything. We see a default going through, giving up B control, because on this first round, you know, more than likely, nobody's going to be overextending themselves just yet to get a crazy spawn peak.
I almost feel like the first half was won by adaptability. Oklahoma was really struggling right off the rip, 4-1 against them. Florida Blue looks so much better on their attack, but then they just never changed anything. And Oklahoma almost changed up their strategy nearly every round, Dallas, and it paid off at the end of the day. Oklahoma, though, this time struggling on their attack in this pistol round. They lost 1 off towards the A main entrance. They pivoted back in swiftly towards C. They lost their engagement there as well, leaving the 3 players out towards Mound. A far-range gunfight with a Ghost goes in favor of Civ against their doppelganger, but it still is at a player disadvantage, and they don't have the safety net they would like to get that spike until they can get this crouch. Tommy Gun ensuring something is there, and even getting some tap shots off towards A-Kill. It's only 8 HP, but that's enough to really secure a kill if you know that they're already damaged at least a little bit, but it wasn't here for Tommy Gun. Polar and Civ forced to refrag. Civ gets their 3rd in the round. Halibel almost had it. 25 HP total, probably between the 2 remaining players in Oklahoma, but the Whirlpool keeps them unable to fight up with their gun up safely, and a beautiful Holden round coming out from the last 2 remaining players of Oklahoma.
I mean, the ideas was there that, from the likes of Florida Blue. You knew the retake was going away. They said we've taken the C side 1,000,000 times on the attacking side. All we got to do is just replicate this once more on the defensive end. And they had all the players there to do it. They rendezvoused together towards Waterfall. I think that was their biggest fault, was having so many players allocated towards that one singular point. They just got to spread out. I mean, there was no real capitalization off it from the likes of Oklahoma, but they didn't need it. Their shots were nailed. They knew they had the lead, and you can tell they're feeling a little bit more confident themselves than the likes of Florida so far. And now, having another round where they have a second gun to work with, they're getting the force in this side of the half. They're saying, hey, our defense, it had a little bit of a slow start, but we picked it up. That momentum is now carrying over into the second half entirely. And I think not only in a round like this, but you're seeing 2 Bulldogs being played to where it could also have a massive effect in the third one as well against those legitimate rifles coming through. So who knows really how this could pan out, but you're expecting a round like this with a Vandal toppled on as well. This is a very, very expensive round for Oklahoma, but I think, honestly, seeing how they've been playing this game so far, it may surmount at least to a flawless, because they got to have 4 players on the board to hold on to all that material they've been picking up.
To top it all off, they're picking a site that Florida Blue just really didn't feel comfortable with. Yeah, they went 1 for 1 for it, but it required 2 ultimates to secure the site in the first place for Florida Blue, and then to hold on to it afterwards with that Viper's Pit. It was too costly to control, and Oklahoma, if they have the same mindset that C is king and A is just a tertiary objective, they're going to have to use everything they can in the face of Florida Blue, and they're doing so exceptionally well. 2 players trying to prowl up through defender spawn all the way back towards ramp, dealt with closely with a judge. And a little bit of assistance with a Bulldog. Flank was coming through as well. Florida Blue left with nothing to answer for it. And I mean, what can you possibly do? I'll tell you what it is. Die through a wall if you're Halibel. Apparently spotted. And there's the flawless you were asking for, Dallas. Oklahoma give it to you.
Oh, I wasn't asking for it. I knew it was coming. Plain and simple. You look at that kind of arsenal, you look at the Expediture, and even more so, you look at the momentum that Oklahoma had in going into a round like that. I'm expecting not only just to be in that last round. Obviously, I'm not expecting a flawless here. But, I mean, knowing their aggression, seeing kind of how they're picking up, you can tell when a player starts to get into the pocket. When they're really starting to feel themselves and they're just saying, just kind of swing things out. We're getting the hang of our roles here. We can just tell when our game plan works against somebody. And Oklahoma playing for the long game here, it's definitely really starting to show up. Still, 2 Bulldogs and a Vandal inside the half of Oklahoma. I think they can match almost anybody with that. That feels like a legitimate possibility for a round. Shooting me up against the likes of Phantoms and Vandals. Who cares? You got to raise with a charge! You can do anything! Literally!
Trix is having a field day working in not just the previous round, but this one as well. Quick and swift around the bend. It may be widened, but it's not enough to keep Oklahoma at bay. A second frag now for them. It's Trix at distance now with a Phantom collected. Florida Blue down to only 3 men. Working 2 of them in from defender spawn. A flank being aroused up from Oklahoma. The Viper coming all the way around in through B. Initially on A, using the toxic screen as a bait on that site. And Halibel, you gotta watch your back, bud. There goes Civ for the conclusion. Just the 2 remaining off towards defender spawn. And I think they've wisened up. This round, yeah, it was lost a couple kills ago, but we're gonna go ahead and secure that. We want something at least, and you're getting nothing at the end of the day.
Even in a second flawless, man. Like, that was, I thought they were going to win this round, but I should have just took the bet. I should have took the over and said they're just going to go for it again. And, well, just seeing the impressive showing they've had so far, they just do exactly that. I mean, well played for them. Even then more so, Florida Blue obviously now having to take their second time out of this game. Props to Florida Blue nonetheless, for I want to say probably being the first team collegiately to use both of their timeouts in a singular match. I feel like we've never seen this before. No, teams more likely forget that they had timeouts in the first place than actually using both of them. But you go ahead, and I'm sure this one actually is for game plan because they're not in the lead this time. They're looking at about half of the score. So for Florida Blue here on the defensive end, you don't have that flexibility of a chamber. You don't have that rendezvous to kind of go ahead and flex yourself across the map. You don't have nearly as much speed as what I would say Oklahoma does on that defensive side. Because even then, you're relying on an Omen, not an Astra. Honestly, Florida Blue, there's holds, as much as I hate to say it, this is the composition where you're just sticking to your guns. Literally. You are hoping you hit those shots. You're having these players stationed about. And if you're doing anything, quite frankly, you're just playing for a retake if things really just start to hit the fan and look ugly. And as much as I hate to say that, that adaptability factor of a 3-site map, you got to think of this map literally almost as Haven. You got to think about these lineups. You got to think about the rotations. You got to think about how quick you can get from one side to the other and whether or not you're planning on beating the attackers to that site when a rotation comes through, or if you want to meet them there, and if you're ready for the spike to be down simultaneously. So I don't think these thought processes are really being calculated too much, and even in a round like this where you don't have guns, you can't freak out about it, but knowing how expensive it's going to be to kind of take a time out in a round like this, usually we see teams kind of hold out, and that's the thing that's catching me off guard. It's saying, we're going to use this pistol round, figure out whether or not they want to double down on something or if they want to spread out again or maybe default. But instead, they're saying, let's just take it. And hopefully this eco looks great. And that's a big bargain to ask for.
Especially considering you've been struggling to find those 1v1 kills that were getting you those round wins in the first half of your attack. Now transitioning in that second half and in the second half of this game in general when you move to the defense. The 1v1s aren't working. Even the 2v1s aren't working. You're engaging out. They knew you're behind box. They even guessed that there'd be a second player there as well. It's just a rough start, yes, in an eco round, but a start that you can't allow no matter the round if you're trying to come away with a victory. And you can tell, Dallas, Oklahoma are out for blood. Benji is tired of it. They were tired of getting absolutely rushed in on C in the early stage of the first half, and they want the blood back in return, and they're getting it. A 3K in this round alone, and they want the others, but it'll be secured by Polar instead, quite frankly.
3 flawlesses in a row, back to back, all starting from that. I mean, even in this entire half being flawless so far, but I mean, the second round is where you're saying, okay, it's understandable, but it was a big expenditure to get there. Third round, you're saying, okay, you know, Rays, they did it right.
Hold on.
They know their PEMDAS. that starts with a duelist, so we're not going to question that. But, I mean, still, ever since then, though, that's where it's just like, ooh, what can you really do? You just got to stick to your guns. You got to play out your game plan. And Florida Blue, I think, they just kind of lost their sense of that. I mean, sure, there are crumbs. There's something that can be managed. There is a game that can be scavenged together, but you got to get a little bit crafty with it, or you really got to have a player just step up and reignite that fire, because that's the game of Valorant, man. You die in the middle of a round, and you're just like, oh, I got to sit around. And I can't do anything for the next, minute and a half, it feels like. And that's something you got to get ready to really sacrifice. That makes these decisions that much more taxing to say, I'm not hopping on cams for the rest of the round, or I'm not sitting around and communicating with my teammates. I'm staying quiet, and I'm letting them make those same exact decisions, because I am no longer here. I'll meet you guys in the next one.
A lot of players will fall early in these rounds, and they'll let that fester. They'll let it stay in the back of their mind, and they'll just brood over it for the remainder and not really grow beyond it. They won't evolve to, overcome the same obstacle that just took them down in the previous round. And that's one of the things I think Oklahoma did well in that first half. They realized, hey, we're getting too aggressive. We're having problems. Maybe they talked about it during the timeout. Maybe they talked about it, when they're in those scenarios where it was already a 4v1 or a 4v2, and they knew it wasn't really likely going to happen for them. No matter the case, Oklahoma changed. And I think Florida Blue are capable of that. We have seen it. They are an exceptional team full of talented players. But we just haven't seen enough of it here on this first map. We'll have to pray that maybe Ascent can be a bit better, but this one's not over until Oklahoma or Florida can net that 13th round under the books. And Florida are having a dangerous and tumultuous time to get there. A 2v2 in the final moments of this round of the spike is down in Dallas. It doesn't seem likely, but PXL, I don't know how they won that fight against Trix, frankly.
Well, the fact that Trix only was like one shot anyways.
Yeah, but he's on first.
Did he though? I
don't
really trust servers nowadays. I've been on a really big rebellion here recently of saying, I'm just going to buy more games that don't require me to be online. I'm not going to drop off the grid anytime soon, but if I ever wanted to, I'd like to bring some darn good titles with me. I know, with your rent prices you were talking about, you may be dropping off the grid soon. You may be going to no man's land. But, I mean, all things considered, though, regardless, I mean, speaking of the grid of stats that we got right here in front of us, you got to look at what Oklahoma's been doing. I mean, they were bound to wake up. They were bound to get slapped in the face eventually for what they've been doing. Let's be real. They were getting overzealous in these last rounds. If you're kind of rolling this entire half, you're saying, we can mess around a little bit. We can give it maybe one round shot. And, well, it didn't really work out for them. Still, Florida Blue, they got a very long road ahead of them. They want to take this high game. That, Oklahoma is only one round off and getting themselves to that match point situation. And, well, I was going to think they were going to save all their ultimates to go together, but the fact that Viper's being used now is quite bodacious of them.
Especially considering that there's still plenty of utility for Florida Blue that can really burn you out of that ultimate. In fact, look how far Civ is being forced out of that entire ultimate. They're having to stay right on the edges of it. No real impact is being made from Oklahoma, and you're just having to bite the bullet. Or Showstopper even finds something on top of it. Trix, you've got to get a kill, and Aiko does it first. Florida Blue, you're looking down the barrel of a Viper's Pit, and it's done nothing to you. You're in the best position you've been in nearly all day on the defense, arguably the best on the defense. And Oklahoma have actually dedicated half of their entire kits just to get a spike down, and they couldn't even do that. Forced now to fall back to their secondary plan of going towards B and leaving the Viper alone, who now has their Viper's Pit dissipate.
What is this round? Figure out what you're doing, man. We have seen every single ultimate that was available during that A-side plant be used in the meantime, and there wasn't even a spike that went down. And regardless, we're still seeing players go ahead overextending, looking for these fights, trying to take them by the teeth. And, I mean, Oklahoma doesn't have the resources to do that. I understand that it worked in the past couple, but you had a very strong, solidified start that warranted that. Here now in these later stages, you were hoping to have some level of insurance if Florida Blue really did step up to the plate and really just start hitting consistently. And we're seeing now that kind of shred of light that's really showing up for them, where they could possibly do that. Guess what? By the time they get around and now tying you, you don't know what ultimates you're going to have available. You're ulting right now for the Tour de Force in a round like this. The Cause and Divide doesn't really provide everything. That Showstopper and Viper's Pit that was used last round is something that you kind of want to use in an end-all, be-all scenario. in what would look like guaranteeing yourself a match point. And that wasn't going to guarantee you anything but saying, hey, we're equal in numbers now.
You want to play? Let's play.
Oklahoma have been kept away from match points here for the first map for just a little bit longer, as Florida Blue have found a much better position, a lot of which is off of Oklahoma's indecisiveness and maybe over expenditure of utility like we saw there in that last round. Whether that comes back to bite them completely or not, we'll have to see, as a tour de force comes out in this one instead from Benji, who has not found any target at the end of it, but is scoped in towards Mound and ensuring that no one from Florida Blue can peek out that archway with their life intact, or at least scathed in any regard. But I think they're just going to sit back. There's no reason to peek that. You know the tour de force is out. You know there's a lot of noise over towards A door. They're spraying it down there with the LMG. What can you do? Well, same thing you just did the round prior, Dallas. Sit back, let them make mistakes, let them burn a lot of their util early, and then punish them on these tertiary angles and flanks, and don't allow them to get that spike down safely.
Slow and steady here. Different approach coming from Oklahoma. Finally kind of being put in their place a little bit, I'd say. And it's nice to see
30 seconds
that
left.
This team, they can take in their surroundings. They can understand their environment. They do have a little bit of understanding of, okay, we can't just do the same thing over and over again. We're starting to see Florida Blue make the adaptations, really start to get a hold of how things are going here, and even then just kind of making sure to kind of punish Oklahoma now. Waiting for a last-second plant is going to be a good play here from Oklahoma. Take all the time in the world, make sure Florida Blue sets up for that post plant, and give them that space. Put them in a situation where they say, okay, they may be all kindled up. They may be all together to really get this thing done. Still, these overexpenditure we talk about, that's where they look good for a gamble. When you think that you're safe, when you think you can make that transition, Tommy Gun comes out, doesn't even die in the process, and the rest of the team can just cleanly hold that site.
3 being held by Tommy Gun alone, almost a 4. Benji, you've done Tommy Boy dirty, but it's fine. 2 kills to close out. You call that what, a house of cards, whatever the heck it's called. You call it Buddy Ace. Every game calls it different, but I'll tell you what we'll call it here for Oklahoma. The round that secures them now match point. 12-7 the scoreline in Florida Blue. Only 2 rounds have they acquired in this second half on the defense, and they were back-to-back, and they were still really at the fault of Oklahoma's poor decision-making at the start, which has been very rare ever since round 6 of this first map of the day. And they're not going to be able to rely on that. They need to find something new. They have a Viper's Pit, which could secure them a good hold off towards C main if they thought Oklahoma was going to go there. And apparently they didn't. They've left that Viper off towards A, now being forced to rotate back. And they don't really know where Oklahoma's coming from. But I'll tell you what, there's 4 players quite close to getting in through C. They just want to get that first blood.
It's just looking to see really how they can play this one. I mean, once again, going over here towards the C side, it looks like this is where we started the game, was the C side over and over again. So it kind of only feels poetic that we just kind of end it here. But Florida Blue, that's their site. They're the ones who begun the game there. And Oklahoma are the ones that want to end it. They want this to kind of be something that's panning out for them and looking pretty good. So you can make some calls with some relative degree to say, hey, that paranoia is now used. We can go ahead and kind of understand that they're not going to have that near side available to them, but they still have the Viper's Pit. They still have the From the Shadows, which I'm not really sure what could do in a situation like this. But even more, you know, Oklahoma's only down to 4 players, more importantly. That Chamber's now gone. Benji hasn't really done the most in the world in this kind of matchup so far, but even more so, you got to talk about the rest of the team and what they've done. Polar hasn't been crazy on this half as what we saw on the last one, and that's totally fine. But everybody else has now gone ahead, stepped into those shoes, and kind of filled in that role to a certain degree and found the respective kills. But even then, that's because Florida Blue has also been kind of playing a lot more slow. You haven't let a single player start to excel in themselves. It's become a lot more into these post-plant scenarios where all comes into this last second push. You see an Odin now spraying through, trying to go ahead and counteract it just so darn well.
So much destructive damage from Oklahoma, but Halibel up around the corner with the judge way too far to attempt something. Drop down from Aiko. Tricks, you got a little too overzealous. And oh no, Polar just can't get anything done. It's an ace for Aiko. What in the world is going down for Oklahoma? Every single time Aiko seemed like they were destined to die, somebody would pull back, somebody would not look their way, and somebody would just rush into a smoke and hope that they could pray for safety. Oklahoma fall, but it's still a good game with 4 rounds to go. But you're feeding a beast you don't want to feed. That showstopper was burned a couple rounds prior with no success. They're not going to make the same mistake twice, and they're just 1 pip away from it again.
Yeah, I mean, it's that situation where it seemed like Oklahoma had everything stacked up for them. Maybe then they went ahead, equalized the numbers there, but it was just kind of a little bit of a fault of letting that spike, regardless of the ace going off. They were all too concerned about that spike tap that went down. You saw that player back towards mound trying to shoot that spike over and over again, saying somebody's on that, y'all need to push for it. I can't find that shot. And they couldn't care less, quite frankly, who is surrounding them, whether they have a player running and gunning them down. They need to get that spike held because they know that somebody is more than likely sticking it. And because of that alone, ace or no ace, they lose that round. So, I mean, it's just kind of situations. Once again, we've seen this, I want to say 3 times this round so far, where, or at least twice, where there has been a mid-round defuse go off purely because of spike placement. And it's small things like that where even though we see both these teams playing to such an extended caliber against especially both of each other, they're still small little things that are literally surmounting to the biggest punishments possible. And right here, match points are pretty large, and I could argue.
Trix goes for the rotate in through small. Just trying to make sure that Halibel, who was spotted all the way back towards defender spawn, will be cleared away from there with a paint shell. That gives Oklahoma full control of the B side and gives them the freedom to plant down that spike. And they have a full 5v5 now ahead of them to defend this. And if you can catch Fizz with their gun out, not at the ready, you can get yourself a freebie. And if your name is Trix, unfortunately, Aiko's left unwarranted, extending out. They got their pip, couldn't get the showstopper, and it's just Halibel. 1v4, what can you do? They're spraying you down. Tommy Gun gets the final, and it's a 13-8 finale for Oklahoma in our first map of the day in this series, Dallas. And a pretty darn good one at that, if you ask me.
Yeah. I think, honestly, I mean, the way it shaped up, much better than what I was expecting, considering that start that we saw from Florida Blue. Not all that great. Things are looking like they could just be a 13-5, and we're just kind of going ahead, walking home, and going to the next one. But thankfully, regardless of result, we talked about feedback. We talked about giving it back to us, see what's happened, and we understand that a lot of people were very confused about best of ones, even us included. But hey, we did it. We tried it. Maybe we innovate. Maybe worst comes to worst, players can eat dinner a lot earlier than they do in other leagues. And I know you can't complain about that, but it's a best of 3 now. There is another map that's going to have to be played. There is a decider possibly that will come underway if we see Florida Blue going ahead and kicking this one to high gear. But Oklahoma, the way they played that thing, sure, they slowed down there towards the end, but we saw their long con really start to kind of work out for them there. I love the way they made the adaptability and the adjustments there towards that second quarter of the game. I would say the latter half of the first half when they were on defense, but seeing the way they played this game and seeing kind of how they made those adjustments and even more so kind of the way they played it, they just seem like a fluid team. They can kind of really adjust to whatever is at hand. They can mess around, do this. They can have a player overextend, then go for some wild plays like Tommy Gunn pushing in during the middle of a KJ. When we've seen every single Florida Blue player understanding that, all right, they like to set up for these retakes. They like to hold out for a little bit and say, all right, ring the dinner bell and everybody's heading out. If you go ahead and have somebody jump that line of scrimmage beforehand, there's no referees here. We're not calling penalties and stopping the play for that. That's completely legal. Go crazy. Do what you got to do. Seeing that out of Oklahoma and making those plays and getting a little bit iffy and getting a little bit cocky at times, while it seems like it would punish a lot of teams, they were actually able to back it up and warrant it. So, I mean, congrats to them for winning Lotus in that exact regard, but that's not the end of the day. Ascent is a tried and true map that's been around for ages, and adaptability is the name of the game for this one because, well, it's in every single series, so you better know it.
If you adapt first, the other team tends to adapt, and then you got to adapt to their adaptation. Then it's just a game of who can do it in the last rounds, right? Yep. But Oklahoma did it quickly, and then we didn't really see much out of Florida Blue, and that's got to change. And Ascent is a map that you probably have 35 different adaptations you could bring to the table. There's no more copium that it's a new map. We maybe don't know as much as we necessarily could have. You know this one. Put your money where your mouth is and show up to the second map. But before then, we're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back here with more SEL. See you soon.
swept off my feet and pulled into the fading tide. Come and save me, take me away, far from this place. Waves are crashing over my heart. I can't stop this feeling.
With a scent on the chopping block, and we've in a map that was clearly in favor of Oklahoma. Once they started getting themselves into it a little bit more there, Dallas. How do we feel about UF Blue's chances? I think they've got a shot, and this is the
Yeah.
map to really test any team on. But Oklahoma looked like too good of a team to fall at the end of this last map.
I think, or I mean, we're going to ascend, man. I think any team here really has a shot. I mean, that's all it really comes down to. This map is a tried and true. It feels like the home of Valorant, and we all know how it is at home. You can literally move around your entire house with your eyes closed and really just say, I know what's going on. I know that's my couch. I know that's my TV. That's my bed. I mean, you can just get the entire layout. But problem is, your job as an opposer isn't to just rearrange all the furniture, because this is a map in Valorant where you just really can't do that. It's to be that one guy who shifts everything an inch and a half
An
to the
inch
left
and a
and to the
half.
right, where it's like everything's where it's supposed to be, but something's different and you just can't tell what it is. That's
Some-
going to be the job of each of these teams here, whether it be on the defense or attack, is to go ahead and keep on changing things up tiny bit by tiny bit and saying, okay, we know you feel good here, but this is lethal territory. Regardless, you are going to die. You're going to be seeing these rounds, as we mentioned earlier, where somebody's going to be spectating for at least 40 seconds in every single round, and you don't really want that to happen. You want to slow things down. You want to kind of figure out what's going on there. You want to gather that information, and you at least want to be able to open your eyes and look at your surroundings before starting to maneuver around blind.
You know, stub my toe once, shame on me, Dallas, right? Stub my toe twice, and somebody's moving the furniture around, right? Something
It's
is
always
not
somebody.
something is not what it needs to be.
My
and for
keys are getting
Oklahoma,
airdropped right now. Somebody's got the keys to my house, and they are passing it around.
it's a different person every single time too. Oklahoma did a great job of making sure everything seemed like it was the same, but never truly was on our previous map. But a sense even easier to do so for pretty much every team, whether you're a ragtag crew just stepping into a competitive ranked game, or you're a hard crew team like at a university esport program that has another great team, a second roster, a primary roster, technically speaking, for Florida's case, that you can scrim against on maps like this consistently to get that practice in. Everyone knows it. And that furniture, it'll seem a little bit more obvious, but you can still, maybe not an inch and a half move to the side, maybe just half an inch is enough to really throw a wrench in things and cause that pinky toe to go crying home for help.
Well, speaking of a wrench and things, I want to go ahead and look at these agent compositions. Nothing really too crazy in the side of Florida Blue. We do see some, I would say, interesting hovers nonetheless. Not only just the ISO, but the deadlock as well. Those could be both two things that are quite awkward, but even then, still, regardless of what's going on, Civ on the KO makes sense. Benji, locking in that KJ. Thank you. I mean, I've seen crazy. I've seen some odd stuff. The ISO can be played here. Quite frankly, ISO can be played anywhere. He's just very, I would say, he's pretty static, not all that crazy. He's just really kind of fun to see, and the vulnerability, good God, it's just absolutely insane. It's like, think of a snake bite, but you just don't know what's coming. And next thing you know, oh, I'm dead to 2 bullets of any gun ever. But all things considered, that's not going to be the case here. I mean, mirror comps for both sides. No real adjustments being made there. We mentioned this map, how long it's been around. This is the comp. And if you're not playing it, you're not weird, but you're definitely different. Credit to you, but you got to make it work.
Yeah. You can't change, you know, butter and toast, right? That's the way it feels like. You can maybe add some jam on it, you know, maybe you like peanut butter on toast in the mornings instead, right? But you can't change the core components of it. So while 1 or 2 things can be adjusted to get a whole new meal, the core thing there is that it's a piece of bread getting stuck in a toaster, and at the end of the day, it's just the same old thing. And that's what we're seeing here. They like buttered toast. They like it in the mornings, or, well, I guess dinner time, like you mentioned here now. And they want to make sure that their toast is just a little bit tastier and they're making sure that they're either doing salted or unsalted butter at the end of the day. They're going to go ahead and set up for a plant on the B site as they have stacked every single player for Oklahoma here inside of B lobby towards Octopus. Not even anyone in main yet. They haven't even started to step over towards this side until just now, when the limited utility they have is now being dumped out towards B, and they know that the only one or two players defending this site have no chance against the barrage of players Oklahoma can send at them.
Yeah, it's fast, it's aggressive, it's quick, it's an attacking side, and it's a first round for Oklahoma. It's clean so far, it's looking good, and that's what you want. You want to be flooring this thing, and that's what it comes down to the first round. Are you going 0 to 60 and an 87 Nissan Altima? Are you in a 2020 Rari, baby? You want to be going ahead and pedaling that thing. And we see Oklahoma coming out swinging. Good look so far, but now that you've hit 60, promise some cars are going to go faster. They're going to be here. They're going to want to play. In a 2v2 situation, you got 2 players in Boathouse. You see an exchange of 1 so far, but Oklahoma now still being able to double down. Aiko is looking for the moment. A good start for the rest of the team. Maybe throwing a little bit of a curveball out there, but no, sir. Civ reads it. First round the board for Oklahoma. It's a good start because not only was there momentum, saying it carries over in halves and Lotus, it also transcends the entire series and gives them a first to go ahead and come out swinging on a set.
It's not enough of a break. Sometimes it seems like players can still stay hot. They can still stay warm. They must have had a hand warmer still saved from, you know, the long Christmas, the long winter season we've had, where it's still been quite cold down in this region, in the southeastern region of the United States. Since we're SEL, we'll just go all the way with it there. They still have those hand warmers saved, and they're making sure they still stay toasty. Speaking of toasty, though, things can get a little bit too hot in the kitchen, and right now it seems like Florida Blue may be facing that. They were trying to play a little bit up front. They had themselves a dangerous way to do so, but they're forced back by Oklahoma's barrage utility and the LMG that they're being sent through that wall. There is no safety net. If the net can just be torn through, like nets tend to have holes, and there's holes now inside of your KO of Stephen Hawking, and I don't even know how Fizz managed to survive as long as they did, but this is a core of a round for Oklahoma as they, I don't even have a Pixel? Free gun, by the way, guys, just FYI, that's a free gun that Pixel is using.
Well, they're also cramming that gun right into their mouth as they pull the trigger.
Please.
I don't care whether you're Radiant or whether you are a regular mortal. If you put a gun, whether or not it's a Glock or whether or not it's an AR-15 right into your mouth, probably not going to be all that great. But considering that still Oklahoma, that they kind of wanted to have a little bit of fun with it and get that done, they still carried on a lot of guns into the next one. They had the majority of their team. They knew, okay, guys, so we at least want the majority of these things carrying over to the next one. They wised it up, slowed down, let that player with the classic say, now you got to swing us because, well, we do have this fight down and we gave you an opportunity to kind of go ahead and fight us out right. You got your 2 orbs for your ultimate carrying forward, but as it stands right now, you can get a little bit more because the rifle round coming up from Florida Blue. They're going to slow things down. They got to hold these angles. They got to play the long range because Oklahoma, they're in a state now to where they can't just run at them with absolute utter speed. They can't have a raise, blast pack with a judge into your face like they did on Lotus. This is something totally different. They got to utilize everything they have. Paranoia cutting off the audibles for a tailwind to come and get aggressive into your face. It's the perfect way to do that to go ahead and facilitate a play.
A beautiful execution from Oklahoma. They had a really rough start to it. The 0 point came out from Florida Blue, and you get the information that the Sova is off towards A main. So, hey guys, it's likely going to be an A push. Let's leave our 3 men stacked here. But you don't keep in mind that your one Garden player that's all by themselves can't even escape fast enough, and that's your Jet. That's your one agent you're expecting to be capable of getting away. But when a Jet chases a Jet, you're not making up much space. And a lighter weapon gives you a little bit more speed. And it's Oklahoma now from the get-go, collecting the rifles that have been dropped on the A side. Spike going down as well. If you liked rifles, you liked credits, you're getting even more of them here. And they're going to start hunting the 2 remaining players you assume are still on the B side or assume are hiding somewhere, and you see them, but how can you chase them when they hide away? But they don't do it again. Fizz, why the peek, bro? It's Benji for the kill.
He's trying to, Fizz is literally trying to protect.
He's trying to save him.
I got to, boom! Oh, you should have died there, not me. But, I mean, it's fun to see stuff like that. Nobody should have swung away trying to fight.
Mr. President.
That, frankly. I mean, I get it, but I mean, regardless, you're now, instead of dealing with the Phantom in a round like this, you're dealing with a Sheriff, and you're paying the price for peeking that. But even more so, Florida Blue is an entire team. They're paying the price of this entire game so far. I mean, look at these kind of executions. I think that's one of the things that we've seen that Oklahoma has probably refined more than anybody else has been their second round setups for their third round. We've seen their third round executions just be so good. On Lotus, when they made sure to say, okay, we have an avenue. Sure, it's a one-trick pony, and sure, it's our only option, but we're all in here. It's all or nothing. We raise with the judge. That's okay. If they die, we're still just running in because we probably don't win that round anyway. In a round like that, you're saying we're going ahead and shoving through tree because what's it really matter? We're shoving in anyways. It's these situations where we see him doing really well. Already opening things up, getting at least one on the board. You say that that A site isn't looking all that hot because you had one singular flanker kind of roaming around the map. Everybody else is overwhelming this B site, saying that is a very easy sacrifice to take, considering all those guns were free anyways.
And now you get a positional advantage on the B side where you can plant right in the doorway of Boathouse, leave two players back there, leave one over towards B lobby, and yeah, there is a 2v1 pushing them, but Benji takes those. They're welcoming the fight, and even when they're paranoid out, it seemingly still is effective to survive and buy time. Down goes Benji. Echo is the player to do so. Polar, the second, the doppelganger of Echo once again to find it. The only person to find kills for Florida Blue in this round. And they're going to have their money cut out for them to get more. 4K strike! The second one in this series as a whole, as Florida Blue have been relying on a single individual in too many of their rounds today to secure victory.
Big round there, just out of Echo. That's all it's needed. I mean, that was the only round we've seen Echo get killed so far. So maybe that's the key, is your duelist has got to get some kills for your team to get some rounds. And hey, so long as you learn that later than never, you're looking good here. So able to go ahead and at least get on the board. Better yet, on the fourth round. Sure, it's a little bit late, but it doesn't really matter. Still, pleasure here for Oklahoma, though. They still have money. That last round of them didn't really cost them anything. They just say, we just follow up with what we had. We picked everything up. We scavenged things together. And this is a round where we actually have to go ahead and kind of bite the bullet here. At least economically. We're the ones taking these sacrifices, making these purchases. And even then with that, we don't want to just control a site. We want to control the whole map. That's why you start right down the middle.
Quick shock dart to try and flush player out from Puppy. Not necessarily placed in the best of positions, though. So it doesn't get the actual cubby itself. In Oklahoma, can't be too confident in their utility expenditure to trust this angle. Thankfully, it doesn't seem like Civ is, but it won't stop the onslaught from Echo and Stephen Hawking holding that corner. It's an even trade, but it's still so much of your attacking presence on the back of your KO and your jet being knocked off the board. You have no way to close that distance effectively now as you extend in towards the A side. Halibel towards the rear, hiding behind Generator. Thought they'd be coming from the front, but Benji snuck around the rear and capsizes the defensive boat that Florida Blue were trying to stay afloat on. And it's a man advantage back in favor of the attack with the plant down and post plants being held well. Off towards Winery, one down in Hell and the other behind Jin. This is a very good hold. They just got to keep it there.
Just comes down to making sure that single player is still on Jin. He's more of a distraction. And sure, while he can get a couple kills there in the meantime, you're just looking to hold things out for that post plant. Sitting back towards that arch, and even then maybe the heaven player inside Hell, they're just there. It's literally set up as a pit. Just back and forth, make sure that Soba becomes enough of an annoyance to everybody else that you're too busy swatting that mosquito to notice that Sasquatch is running up on you. So all things considered, right there, another round for Oklahoma, looking good for them. They're understanding not only what their kind of aggressive pushes are going to look like when they take them, and better yet, where they take them, but even then more so understand their post plans, that they don't need to over aggress there, that the time is playing into their favor, and we see them slowing things down. It is that shift in pacing on a round to round, not only that, a second to second basis, that shows that they're just a little bit more, I would say, disciplined in this entire game and the way they play things. Just knowing that we can push, we can also stop. And they know that their brakes and their gas pedal both work.
You should run.
You see those videos, Dallas, of, you know, it's like, count the sheep that jump over this fence, and you're supposed to count it, but like, did you notice the man in a gorilla mask in the background dancing the whole time, right? Like, you look at something so close, you tend to lose the bigger picture. And it looks like Florida Blue are maybe falling for it ever so slightly. Like we said, if you tend to see or feel one or two things missing, you may start to adjust on that. But Oklahoma have changed up every round. It doesn't ever feel like the same sort of attack. It doesn't ever feel like the same old thing. And Florida Blue just haven't even found the answer to the previous round. So how can you expect them to find the answer to this one as it goes even further down the hole? A 4v2, the last two remaining. Well, they're not in the best area. Trapped in defender spawned. They don't know if they can truly escape. A shrouded step would give them at least a different angle to work from if your name is Halibel, but Pixel doesn't have that. Their step is over towards defender spawn. At least they have a gun, but you have to hope that a round can come out of more than just kills, and you know this round is already lost. What else can you do?
That lets them rush
just running them though, I guess.
They genuinely could make it if they just weren't playing in spawn right here. They pushed tunnel. They honestly could have probably had the time. Like, that's just what Oklahoma. That was fun. One of the situations where I give Oklahoma their praises, man, and they just say, "Oh, brakes don't work. Sorry. Have a nice day." Right after I just gave them so much credit for saying they know when to stop, they know when to go, and they say, "You know what, Nick? No, we're just gonna go. Just stop. that was an expensive round. Look,
But
you're all
Nick, we have
broke.
money. We've won 5 rounds, Mick. We have cash.
Trix is
loaded. Trix is got a Scrooge McDuck.
Dude, why are you playing Valorant? Put that in 401k, you can retire next year.
Oh my goodness. To be fair, Trix is the one player not to die last round, so they have a little bit. They've got a few extra credits still remaining in the back pocket. You could have bought one of your buddies something though as well. Come on.
Easy trick made me retire early. Not pushing in the last round.
Yeah, it's crazy. The attackers hate this strategy. A 5v5 post-plant scenario, and yeah, there is a lockdown being employed, and Tommy Gun thought something, but the detainment will still go through because they just... There was no way out of it. Also, why'd you go right instead of left? Oh, they're defusing.
Of course, they're gonna have already.
Yeah, the no command goes out though. Sim will be DBNO'd, but Florida Blue still just can't do a thing. Hunter's Fury, throw it back in their face. Your own lockdown on top of it. No command, throw the whole kitchen sink at them, why don't you? And all that for nothing in the back pocket of Florida Blue. Flawless round for Oklahoma.
I mean, we're looking at Florida, we're looking at Oklahoma, but I'm seeing nothing but Kansas. There is an entire tornado of stuff being thrown around. And quite frankly, you can't figure anything out of what damage is done until the dust settles. And somehow Oklahoma comes out unscathed? It's just wild. Every single ultimate in that round used at least every pointless one. I mean, what are you going to do with the front of the shadows? But, I mean, hey, if everybody's pressing X, why not? But all things considered, rounds done and dusted. It's behind us. Oklahoma's already guaranteed themselves an even half worst-case situation, but they're not done just yet. Florida Blue doesn't really have any economy for a round like this. They're dealing with a bunch of sheriffs. And even then, surprisingly, Oklahoma isn't really capitalizing too much off the back of that. Going for a little bit of an A push so far. Looking to push up through a tree, trying to get a couple more kills. They've already gotten 2, but they didn't find any other mid-pressure other than that because they want to overwhelm this A site. And oddly enough, with a couple players towards A main and a couple in tree, the rest of the team hasn't gotten the memo that maybe we should make the road tech.
Shots not to connect if you're on the side of Florida Blue, knowing you're in an eco. Unfortunately, that's just not going to happen. Oklahoma will take advantage of range where those rifles tend to be the most effective. And now getting that information from your sentry left over towards top mid, Benji is pretty aware that they're coming up, and I don't even think they realized Pixel was there. They were a byproduct of that first frag, and it puts Oklahoma, well, at the same margin they had at the end of the first half on our previous map, with still way more rounds to go in this map of Ascent, and Florida Blue, another timeout. This one not to... What did you call it? Taunting or saying we've got a lead, let's talk things through. This one, a much needed timeout. A lot like their second half timeout.
I mean, yeah, it's just one of those scenarios where we did see Florida Blue obviously step it up off the back of that timeout in that last map. But I mean, even then, still, it just didn't really surmount the win. We're seeing, honestly, a bigger deficit than when that timeout was made on that half. I mean, sure, things are kind of going ahead and not looking too hot, but even then, it doesn't really come down to a score differential at that point. It comes down to this half of the way things are unfolding. That last one, I'll give it credit. They took it after the eco round rather than before, because the eco round, keep in mind, still didn't work out for them. So they at least kind of talked things out during that round, saying just try to get it done, try to see what we can figure out. When the A site's lost, honestly, I think you don't even go for a retake there. Just save it out, die at the end of the round, and say, okay, what are they doing? You take a timeout literally like this, where you have about 45 seconds added on top of that, so long as you just kind of wait out the clock. But all things considered, Oklahoma with a very, very big lead, knowing that no matter what, they guaranteed themselves an even half. And that last round was just a cherry on top. Now, if you're not a big fan of cherries, you go for strawberries, go for blueberries. I mean, you were looking to get a whole cornucopia right on top of this thing to get yourself to that next half. And honestly, regardless whether or not Oklahoma has a bad defending half, they're going to be set up to where they honestly only have to really win the pistol to guarantee themselves something.
They want to go for something aggressive here in this round, right? They want to claw something back, and I think the operator is a solid choice to do so. But if you're bringing the KO, you are already aware that that's a possibility, and that's why you have that 0 point even further. If they go for the peak, don't let them get away from the peak, right? Don't let them, get that dash out. Don't let them, if they're a chamber, use their rendezvous out, right? That was the major counter back in the day. You want to make sure that there is something there to shut down a retreat, and you can take for the positive frag. Oklahoma don't have to worry about it, though, if they just don't peek bottom mid. They'll head in towards B. They do pick up one. That was the player trying to extend out towards Puppy. They lose too many in the process, though, as Florida Blue has started to realize and actualize the strategy that, hey, if they step out of B main, we have multiple angles we could deny that from, and we'll use those well to kick up our second round win.
That operator is exactly what they needed. Not only covering that middle of the map where we see a little bit of pressure being alleviated there from Oklahoma, kind of at the start of every single round, but even then more so it also guarantees at least one shot on the person there towards A side. And that's the biggest thing that honestly we needed to see out of Florida Blue, was just guaranteeing a kill, because it felt like the start of these rounds, by the time they ever got into a gunfight, they didn't have a player overextending and dying per se. But it felt like by the time anything ever happened, they could never really guarantee themselves a kill and say, we get one for sure, and kind of equal out those numbers and say we get a trade. Until at Oklahoma, they were moving so fast to where it felt like the player that dies kind of forgets they die, because they're just moving at such a pace where you're just like, things are still being done. I'm still feeling my impact, even though I'm watching somebody else's POV. And having that operator now slows that down to where, say, if they're pushing through and somebody boom right through, you're saying that's a player already gone. I didn't get to get anything off. I didn't make any pressure, take any real estate, and it covers not only that middle of the map and provides that lingering pressure, but also covers right here, this A main area where players will be locked up, and you will see those shots go through. Whether or not they're missed, that at least once again shows that, okay, corner by corner, cover by cover, it can't be one fell swoop.
Honestly, Fizz, I think, stayed out for that Owl drone to tag them on purpose, to keep Aiko uncovered and to be too tantalizing of a target to deal with. If the Owl drone had tagged Aiko with the operator, I think it would have been a push out through B coming out from Oklahoma. They would have extended to take down that player, but with the lack of information, go away from the boomstick. Pick somewhere else. Go somewhere else. And they do so left. Swiftly. The rotate in through spawn all the way over to A. Now the plant going down there, and they've lost nothing in the process. But you still have to be worried as the operators rotated up in through rafters. Pixel, the wall bang into tricks. They try to send out the shock darts. Does Tommy Gun have the ability to survive it? Gets one, but falls as Pixel takes two more with them. And it is Florida Blue just doing a spectacular job. If it wasn't for Benji up above, left uncontested, Alabel saving graces for Florida Blue, barely holding on and giving them another round win. They're second now, back-to-back, 3 total.
I mean, props to Benji for what he was going for in that round. I was keeping my eyes on that mini-map, seeing him the entire time, but it felt like he was crouch walking through half of it, saying, I'm thinking this has to come through. It's got to be faster. It's got to go ahead and kind of, at least go ahead and cut off that hit and let you know if you grab maybe one player, even two, you're saying, I have done my job. Sure, they're going to push that site, but the numbers are still even. I felt my presence, and if I go fast enough, that's either A, one player sticking behind just to watch me, so the numbers will still be my team's advantage, or they completely forget about me, and I can still get that spike off. I just have to haul it right now. And even then, but still, regardless, it's just not made there. But at the end of the day, another round, done and dusted behind you is good for Florida Blue, though, because they've needed to get in this game. Problem is, they're not going to do it in a situation like this, where we already see Polar just losing his life right off the get-go. Tommy Gun losing half their HP just through an Odin spray through, which, well, sure, rivaling Odins and Sovas through walls. I mean, it's the name of the game. We see it on defense every single time on this map, but we don't quite frankly see it on attack as much. And that's for a good reason. You don't have as many good angles. But with 3 ultimates here for Florida Blue, even then, I mean, great defensive hold. They have options. They have insurance. And they have, more importantly, with that KJ, if she stays alive, get a retake.
Recon Bolt up over the top. Oklahoma, with nearly every player they still have available at their fingertips inside of A main. You can pretty much guess this is going to be an A-sided push. And with Spike now out there in the hands of Tommy Gunn, it's now all but guaranteed. They have the ability to send out the Hunter's Fury, but only 37 HP to that player. They are going to be the one to have to fall back off towards Winery, if not even further back, as they'll use it instead to counteract the lockdown.
Will they?
And they couldn't get the third shot out. The 0 point denies that bit of space, and you still get detained. How many times has this been a problem for them? Shots have to go out. You have to reload. Keep a full magazine, folks. What happened to the old days of firing one bullet and reloading immediately afterwards?
In the half.
They just don't have enough to get the job done. And Florida Blue, for free, seemingly, get another round on the defuse.
That's the third mid-round defuse we've seen
crazy
this entire series so far, which is just wild. I mean, it's those kind of small, tidbitty things that are just like, you got to iron them out. And obviously, another big thing wasn't even just that. It was also the fact that you're using a Hunter's Fury and get absolutely nothing out of it. The entire point of that was to burn the KJ lockdown, and it just didn't happen. You're not getting really any info out of it. No player's going to be on Spike. I mean, what to really do?
Round the corner they go once again as Oklahoma dash out into B side. A, it's not worked for them, Dallas. And frankly, B hasn't been the best in the last few rounds, but it can be the best, and they know that it can. They just have to be a little bit more aggressive. Leave Benji back over there towards B main. Nobody is moving in on the flank, which means you'll just have that long crossfire. And there's little to no utility actually on the board available for Florida Blue to clear out B main effectively. Just a smoke, a dark cover, and hope for the best. The Nano Swarm's nowhere near. They can't waste it there. So what can you do? Well, push and pray. The Blade Storm from Mako takes down one. Pixel, though, what a hero for the side of Florida Blue in the last 6 or 7 even rounds for Florida Blue. Even though they haven't won that many in quick succession, almost all of the ones they've won have been at the back of Pixel, carrying the Florida Blues defense. And now they have to do it again on attack.
7-5, not too bad, but I mean, it just really comes down more so to the fact that Florida Blue was able to step it up and get those 4 back-to-back leading into a half like this, to where, honestly, everything's completely negated if they just win these first 2 rounds. Oklahoma, not really going to be in the best spot because of that. I will say that their third rounds have looked a lot more kind of even, and with that 2-1 split that we see when Oklahoma is on the rear end of it, when Oklahoma is on the advantageous side, winning that first round, winning the second, they always have somewhat of a game plan set up for the third and their second bye. So that's kind of the big thing here for Florida Blue is, sure, you're looking good, but this is either a 7-7 or a 5-10, quite frankly. And that's the kind of big concerning lingering thread that's going to be sitting over their head this entire time. That's why I stress that they needed more rounds leading into this, and they have to win these matches so much more than anybody else.
4 players stacked up inside of markets. They're going shopping for something, and apparently it's body bags. Oklahoma cannot escape from there unscathed. Echo alone have already taken down 2. Very little HP to their name as they'll stack over towards Short Cubby instead. Enough time has been bought, and Spike will be given the free leeway to go down. And Benji has prowled enough, long enough, to go back towards their trotting grounds of B main, where they have to beat Calibel, and that just doesn't go their way as Echo, despite the limitation of HP, cleans up for their 3rd kill of this round and gives Florida Blue the pistol, and assumedly the second thereafter, which would tie up this series 7-7, which was something I never expected to see considering how difficult Florida Blue have had facing off against Oklahoma here.
I mean, just seeing the way this has worked out so far, I mean, Florida Blue winning themselves another one. I mean, I don't think it's going to be momentum that transcends the entire map, but I mean, still, it's enough to at least get them possibly one more on the board here, knowing that Oklahoma is not going to be opting for anything crazy here. They're not going to go for any share of half armors or whatnot and kind of force out whatever they can. They're just going with what they got, and they're saying just find these classics and see if anybody will overextend. That's not going to be the case, though, because they're on the defense, and, well, Florida Blue, they know that Oklahoma is probably going to do exactly that. You'll see a shorty buy being bought. Maybe if somebody wants to swing that angle, but that's not going to be the case. Still just finding some good picks, some good pressure, and even then, better yet, a good distraction on the opposite side of the field. Florida Blue just finds free real estate on B.
The worst part is, Dallas, the one person that Oklahoma would have been able to gain in this firefight, and eventually does do here with Fizz, didn't even have an SMG. They had a Ghost. They don't gain anything out of that single kill. They weren't getting a weapon that they could use here in this post plant. They get a Ghost, which they could have just bought themselves at the end of the day. It's only just a single advantage, which you had already lost earlier, and he took down the one up close out of arches that you could have had in terms of player count. It's not what you're really hoping for. Bulldog, though, is exactly what you're hoping for if you're Florida Blue. Pixel has been on a tear. Not missing, not backing down, and giving Florida Blue everything they could to step up now to a 7-7 split.
Now, this is where we actually get to see just kind of the flexibility of Florida Blue. We obviously saw them make the switch up when they actually got themselves established on the map, because it took them a really long while to get there, all things considered. But when they finally found themselves a foothold on that defense, things started working out in a pretty good degree, I'd say. And sure, these pistol rounds, you can always chalk it up to kind of how things go and who finds the dangerous picks, and even kind of not really how the angles are being held, just more so what's happening. Hey, the L wall, let's go! But,
hey!
It really comes down more so to how they're going to adjust their attacking side. Because Oklahoma, we've seen them read Florida Blue before. Sure, it took them a while, but it was done nonetheless.
Polar barely gets out of there. Still decides to peek and swing, but it's not the Outlaw that picks up anything here. It's Civ instead with the Vandal. A second one to their name, but outdone by Halibel, who's been a little bit more silent in comparison to what we've seen from them previously. But it's enough to do what they've got to do. PXL, Pixel up for tricks. After the refrag, they try to break down door. Pixel, maybe not the right time to swing, as Fizz was left all by themselves. And Pixel, who we know can clutch up this. But there's just no chance to do it when Benji's up in rafters and waiting for your backside to peek around Jin. Finally, Oklahoma get themselves a round win after 6 in a row go the other way. But they get their expected third round win of the second half after losing the first two.
In a pretty awkward manner too, I'd say.
Very awkward.
I mean, what the purchases were looking like, it wasn't 4 rifles across the board, but even then he had a couple players kind of saving that money, saying if we do lose our lives in the process, consider they have some Bulldogs, that's bound to happen. And the guns that are bought, if they can carry over, that's all that really matters. The Guardian being handed off to Tricks, everybody else is kind of using those guns to their fullest degree. Whether or not it requires a sacrifice in the armor or not, it's still there. And, well, it gets them out here to a round, considering that they're on the defensive side. And it really comes down to what amount of pressure Florida Blue is going to present to them. Knowing they're looking for a mid push, they're probably going to opt for the speed side, with them kind of lurking up towards the middle of the map. But with all that utility being funneled out there, you more than likely are getting an idea that, hey, KJ, let's look towards that middle, because you have no utility there, and they're going to completely wrap you otherwise.
Defaulting up for Florida Blue. Put 2 players all the way in through bottom mid with no one there to deny it from Oklahoma. Market will be a very strong place to work from. And with Benji's loss with a very heavy extension in through B main, this will be a free market. This will be a free B, as there's only 1 player actively defending it, and the rest of the team will be a little bit too slow to rotate in. And your one defending player torn apart the moment they were spotted. And Florida Blue will get a free plant and lose essentially so much momentum that could have been there on the defense, and just turn it back on the attack. It's perfect.
I'm not sleeping on these other Oklahoma players, but still, I mean, they wouldn't have to be in this situation in the first place. Seeing how things are going so far, you had 2 nano swarm grenades, you had a turret placed up, everything there, but you push in front of all of it, expecting yourself to be the best sentry in the game. But you don't even really, you get some damage off, but that's literally it. Florida Blue get free B control, they can hold whatever they need to, and they get to the point where they say, we got a lot of bullets, not that many players really facing us, we can spray through literally every single wall and just really roll for our chances.
Let's get out of here.
Will they successfully get that and find themselves an 8th in the process? And because of that round alone, we see Oklahoma once again right back on their rear foot, once again trying to find themselves a placement, as a couple players can have those shots, can have those opportunities presented to them in terms of getting some kills, but the majority of the team, quite frankly, doesn't.
Benji has been
Benji. That's
yeah, and we saw it as well in the very early stages of Oklahoma on our previous map, right? Benji would kind of get caught out. They'd overextend. They'd get overzealous.
It's a
They'd try
chamber,
too
though.
much.
It makes sense. You
Yes.
can do that. As a
But that
KJ behind
mentality,
all of your utilities.
tends to stick. How long after the chamber meta ended did we still see players play like they were chamber when they weren't? The mentality is infected. It tends to stick for a little bit longer than it should. And it's something that Oklahoma, more specifically Benji, will have to try to work on. And speaking of working on, they worked their way into the A side if you're Florida Blue, and they've gotten themselves a cleanup kill onto a thrifty player on the side of Oklahoma, but they've also lost to a thrifty player, aka Tricks on that side. That's given them the chance to be able to climb back into this one with, I think, every defensive player from Florida Blue back in towards A arches. There's nothing they can do except for pray they can spray down.
Polar, pressure 1 key. You got a Vandal.
Oh, they haven't watched Tree. Halibill's been able to rotate in through mid. There's no way to defend this. Florida Blue had a drought period where they would have had no one capable of watching and would have had to prey on the spray down. But Oklahoma were too non-committal and didn't dedicate themselves to going for a stick or even a fake on that plant to try to force that out.
You look at the stats of that first map, what was happening. The biggest standout we saw of a singular player was Oklahoma and having Polar just completely tear through play. Being that top guy, having 12 kills, Benji kind of following it up, being there as well. Civ stepped it up in that second half, but now being on the KO, you're a little more of a Russell Westbrook. You're just looking for those triple doubles. You're looking to get those assists on top of anything else because you don't want to overextend. That's not the case here on this map so far. It's completely different. Comps are totally opposite. But even then, regardless of what really happens, there are 4v4s we're looking at on the A side, and it is still just nothing but W keys from everybody. But Oklahoma, the shots are a lot more stable when you're not moving. So considering they're standing in place, holding these angles and just taking the shots with no real risk awarded to them. Hey, that makes for a very, very easy mow down of literally everybody else. Oh my God!
Here's the Oklahoma Forte, Dallas.
Yeah.
How do we make a 4v1 a lot more entertaining? Well, I'll tell you, rush them single digits at a time until you're left with just 2 or even just 1, which we've seen from Oklahoma a few too many times. And there it is. They wanted it. They've gotten it. The 1v1 here, and the vision has been spotted.
You're so dead.
Tricks, you're dead. Tricks are, oh my God.
No. I thought Brady was a Michigan grad, because you guys just threw that. Oh my God. I can't. I literally can't. I would say there's a process. I talked about PIMDIS earlier. There is a process. And I said that usually they begin theirs with the duelists, even though PIMDIS starts with a P. I forgot about the part where you gotta think before you do. But they forgot that step too. Yeah.
I thought Brady was a Michigan grad.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope you take both of them right now. Think about what you've done. I hope there's a lot of corners in that facility so you can go stand in them and think about what you just did.
I need to like put a leash on you, but I'm losing it. I can't.
I'm so disappointed. I don't even, they just saved me a lot of money. I don't need to be a dad now because I know what it feels like to be disappointed. That is wild.
Oh my God. Oh, Florida Blue come into this next round with a new vengeance, knowing that Oklahoma don't have much. I mean, who else? What else could there possibly be after that last round? And the fact they were ecoing the round prior to that one as well. Throw out the throw out the ults, throw out the utility, take this A site by storm, and just watch the flank. They did so pretty well. They moved Pixel back that way, but it wasn't enough for Polar to be denied of the headshot with the Sheriff. The Blade Storm's been charged, and
One
now you're
enemy
waiting for the
remaining.
perfect strike. Oklahoma, Tommy gun, 3K in Oklahoma. No more corners. It's fine. Get out of the corner. It's okay. You got something back in the books, and you didn't have to be backpacked by Benji to do it. Benji just got renamed to Tommy Gun for this round.
Oh, Tommy Gunn's had some out.
He's being great.
Well, yeah.
He's been
Yeah,
great.
I think he's better. He's been a much better wild card, kind of making those insane plays that just kind of you don't expect than Benji has. When Benji overextends, you said, "Oh, here he goes again."
This is Benji.
When Tommy Gunn
LA.
does it, you're like, "Oh, something's about to happen." It's that difference in mentality of being a chamber and being an impact player. And that's the big difference there. But I mean, all things considered, though, for Oklahoma once again, I mean, rounds like that. When you have rounds like that, it's that thought process that you're warranted saying we can have rounds like what happened right beforehand. Still, the aggression comes through. They say, look, you guys need to be talking about the last round. That's how it works. They're probably, Florida's still thinking about the last round, but we're already in their spawn, knowing right through them.
When you're tearing them down, you gotta line them up as well. You did. It's perfect. Just Halibel. It's basically a timeout, right? Like, you gotta think of it like that, especially when you've been spotted now by Polar. This is just another chance for Oklahoma to talk things through and not swing them one by one when you're spotted already by utility after the fact. But who knows? We've seen
Oklahoma's
different strategies.
1v5.
Any 1vx scenario where Oklahoma's the X tends to be their undoing, and not like a 1vx that lasts for like 5 seconds. You know, it's just the last player on a site and they've got to deal with. No, it's the 1vx where the person actually thinks things through and sets up for an actual attempt. That's where Oklahoma finds it troublesome. Even when we saw the 2 players in the defense of Florida Blue, Pixel and Halibel, hanging out in defender spawn, they still rushed them. Thank you, Oklahoma, for sitting back. There's nothing in the hands of Halibel that they have that you need. And in fact, if this was got to be an eco round for Florida Blue coming into the next one, Halibel is a rifle. They're going to feel pressure to buy it, right? There's no negative to this point. Let them have it. Don't go too aggressive. There's nothing they can do anyways. Tie this game up at 10 and try to make sure there's no map 3. Because honestly, with the way Florida Blue have been heating up, I don't know if map 3 is going to have that momentum that we highlighted at the start of this series when we saw Oklahoma get a 3-0 round.
No. I mean, there's nobody with a definitive lead going into the later stages of this map. I mean, we saw it on Lotus where it looked like Oklahoma could kind of go ahead and have a little bit of a steamroll going on there and kind of say, we dictate this series. We can kind of decide how quickly it wants to end or go to that next map and how, if whether or not we really want to drag this thing out and kind of have a couple more rounds with you. But, I mean, we're sitting at 10-10. We're looking at double digits across the boards. I mean, no matter what, you're seeing these teams where they're getting to a point to where, okay, you can't really mess around. This could be either person's game, and I'm sure that Oklahoma, they want to wrap things up. It's in at 8-10 p.m. for them. It's right around dinner time. They start at 6, and they probably want to go get some food. Florida Blue, I'm sure that they're going to be the ones saying, we ate before this just in case, and we're not going to let that happen. We're going to make you suffer.
Can't let the food sour, right? Can't grow cold. Gotta make sure you're well stuffed and fed right before it, so you have all the energy necessary to confidently and consistently hold that W key, which is what we've been seeing the entire time so far from both teams when it comes to their attacks and even sometimes from their defense. Oklahoma, we'll have to see if that will go forward, as you've lost your jet. You don't have that duelist any further to help in this extension now into this B side for the retake. You have to play a little bit smarter. You have it from the shadows that could be used for information, but it's a bit too difficult to use that on this B side. And you're already losing players on the attempted exit out from market because you have no assistance on the crossfire. No one that's rotated over towards B main, and it just turns into an inevitable loss and trickling of life against you, as Florida Blue look like they will take a flawless round result as 4 players rush out the ramp. Siv, good for you, man. Yeah. Honestly, good enough, but still a round win for Florida Blue.
I was hoping they had their moment too. Oh.
Oklahoma needed a moment. They need a moment.
But I mean, all things considered, you're still looking at across the board. I mean, double digits for both sides, a 1-round difference. I mean, usually wouldn't be that big of a deal, but considering we're looking at double digits for both teams into that final countdown of 3 rounds for the both of them, you're only looking at 2 for either side before you got to get to that perpetual state of OT, 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 OT. And here on Ascent, good God, those things last ages. probably equate to just as much time as what an entire map would, considering that it's on ascent. You know, both sides at such a heavy degree. So, looking to farm up some ult orbs here for Florida Blue, looking to kind of see if they can put that final nail in the coffin. Not to hit 13, but to at least hit 12. They say we have some insurance. And I like expending resources for insurance rather than actual guaranteed results or kind of cashing in there towards the long arm. But already a 4v4. Got B control, and well, better yet, you got A site complete. And that's what it really comes down to. A great pick coming through there from Florida Blue, getting all the attention on the other side of the map, setting themselves up. They still got Polar in the middle of the map, and that man is going to be a roadblock.
It's just enough to get the one kill, but hunting even more for the second and slowing down Stephen Hawking is exactly what you're asking for. That keeps Trix to have a little bit of a safety net to break down that door, to give another option to transition back to Gordon to get the kill onto Stephen Hawking. It was perfect. And now Oklahoma are struggling with the players actually in sight. Pixel down in hell, being a really big thorn in their side. But they'll be dealt with by Trix, and Oklahoma will deal with this round enough to secure the 11th one to tie things up here and keep Florida Blue away from match point and climb ever closer to not just their match point, but possibly even series point. They took the first map, and they do not want a third if Florida Blue are getting better as time progresses.
It's that 1-1 split that we saw that should have come through there towards mid and over there towards that B side. I like the idea of the fake. It worked out successfully for Florida in getting that plan down, but I mean, it was that roadblock once again. That power position of market from an operator. They cover the middle of the map, they cover the B side of the map. And quite frankly, with that spike down, you don't have the luxury of rotating through spawn anymore. You got to go through the middle, or you have to push through that site. And you know there's at least 3 players now, and you can't take that fight by yourself. So right there's an operator. They still got mid control. They know you have to rotate because guess what? The rest of their team is funneling that site, overwhelming the majority of the numbers that they have to work with there. But that's not an option you have here. Polar shut down almost instantaneously by Halibel because, well, they want an early pick, and, well, they found themselves an early death instead.
How many times have we seen Oklahoma with an overextension, with a boomstick, or anything of that count, like a headhunter or a tour de force? And that led to a trickle effect for the rest of the team the remainder of that time. Trix tries to get information, check if anyone is inside B main. Don't know how much they necessarily saw using there from the shadows. But when you got to press the X key, sometimes you got to do it swiftly. And you got to do so effectively. And I think it was just enough to tell them they want this B side, and they're starting to engage. Tommy Gun could just spray down this line. Has to be careful. Smokes galore. Second one will fall. Third line's up, but just too far. Stephen Hawking able to take down Tommy instead, as Benji up on walkway knows there's at least one on site, and Sid deals with him. Where's the last pixel? Match point, series point, Oklahoma.
I mean, obviously a massive stance coming in from Oklahoma, but still Florida Blue had that space. They had the window to get that plant down, but it's just Tommy Gun with that Odin. You can plant on that corner if you want to. Don't even swing the guy. Force him to swing you, quite frankly. We've literally seen that be a default spot to some degree, to where you just can't find an angle there. But regardless, we saw Florida, they wanted to just put that pressure on. They knew they had the numbers. They wanted to play off the back of that, and they still ended up paying a relative price for it. So going into a round like this, the only thing you really had to work with, Pixel can get a lockdown. That could be probably Florida Blue's best chance. And this guy's got to maneuver through an operator lineup to go get at least one of those ticks. And as soon as you hear the orb going off, you know an Odin is spamming you. You got to go to the other side of the map now, where you have an Omen inside of Wine already pushing for that pressure. So you're choked up. What you got, and I don't think you're getting much more. Considering the guns at hand, you're really not favored for these fights.
It's Guardians, which, yeah, are good, but not even everyone has one. You've left your lone straggler, like we've seen before, for Florida Blue off towards A with, last time it was a ghost, this time it's a sheriff. There's something different, while the remainder of the team, the mass of your roster, are priming themselves up for a B site push, and they're just forced to funnel into utility, forced to funnel into an Odin, and it's somewhere they just know the danger zone. Tommy Gun's already torn through you multiple times in the last few rounds. It's just going to continue. And they're starting to send out the utility, and they're starting to engage. Market has no control, and because of that, Polar takes down Stephen Hawking, and Tommy Gun rips down Pixel. Oklahoma with the lead, but Benji goes down, and down goes Tommy. It's the B site secure for Florida.
Kind of. I mean, you got to sacrifice a player to get the spike out in the meantime, and Echo's only one shot for everybody else. But still, with a Hunter's Fury available, Fizz sitting in there in that post plant, looking back towards A and B main, you have the space there to get something done here. You have that available to you to get the Hunter's Fury up and get that going. But the pressure of trying to find that kill in the middle of the Hunter's Fury, that knockback opening of the player, not giving you the kill window you needed from tricks out of the body shots. You got to look at that spike and you know a player's there. Polar needs to swing that and right-click it for all I care. Somebody's going to get that pressure on, and it's just not there. In a 1v2, it comes down to Polar trying to find these shots, still has to worry about that spike, knows the players in Boathouse, knows the players in main, doesn't right-click on anybody, and ends up giving the operator over to take us into an OT.
So much was there for Oklahoma. Tommy Gunn with the Odin had been so darn good at keeping Florida Blue out of sight. Polar with the operator in market, so darn good about securing the pickup on the exit from the side of Florida Blue coming out of B main. But the slow fallback and the inability to get back through door from Polar as they had tried to sneak back under it after Flip was switched just puts them on this just enough of a downward spiral that it slows down the attempted help of your main man down inside of Boathouse of Tommy Gunn with that Odin, that you just can't give the assistance needed in Oklahoma trickle in. Why is a player stepping out from defender spawn before anyone else has been able to secure an execution point? I don't know. But Florida Blue pounce. They do so well. And the survivability of your Sova inside of B main, inside the corner, even despite the knockback from the Hunter's Fury, just bought too much time to overcome, and Oklahoma will now be forced to go to OT and very well could be heading to a third map that they did not want to see.
Well, they still got an opportunity to go ahead and create a little bit of cushion themselves, but I can tell you the Florida Blue look a little bit more hungry for it, quite frankly. I mean, seeing the way they've been playing these rounds, even that last one where you're just kind of scratching things together. You don't have the best buys in the world, but I mean, you're saying Guardians are enough. It's a rifle. I mean, it's something to work with here. It's good looking for them. And even then already, we see the double down. We try to just hold their ankles comfortably and find these kills. It's just not going to happen. Oklahoma on this attacking side, especially going through tree and forward this A side, has been outstanding in this game. And it's a great way to open up this OT. When all the cards are dealt, this is the one that you can reliably count on, I'd say. But the biggest thing they've been holding back on the site, keep in mind, has been the post plant. So Florida Blue, if there's a time to strike, they can't give up too much here. The 3v4 looks extremely feasible, but it can't be forgiven.
Shocked Earth's just trying to buy time. Time heals most wounds. And if you're Oklahoma, you need a lot of it. Make sure that there is plenty of time to make some mistakes and make up for them. Pixel from above. Tricks, though. Able to take down Echo. Also a big concern, too, for down goes Pixel and Civ with the cleanup crew. Oklahoma, they're attacking round here. Something that they haven't really touched since that first half. And didn't end on a great note. Comes back positive to start the first round of OT as they're back at match point, serious point.
Just getting themselves a leg up in this situation, kind of flipping things around. Now being on the defense, we saw their defense. It's been, I would say their defense has been a little bit more shaky, all things considered. We saw it kind of be a little bit slow to the cut on Lotus. Here on Ascent, it's been pretty 50-50, but knowing the half that was going underway there, it was what really allowed things to happen. Their defense, keep in mind, regardless, end of the day, they don't give up that one round that we were just at a loss of words for. We're not in this situation. Regardless, you already see one player loss from that initiation through that wall, and then they decide, hey, maybe it's a good idea we get another player just go ahead and swing out with the heck.
One enemy.
Well, Polar is here! It doesn't want to keep going.
Yikes.
Good God. What?
I blinked.
Literally, that's what happened. We saw so many players shove up through A main. I'm saying, okay, maybe they're, I wouldn't say throwing this round, but it's a little awkward. And Paulo, the player we highlighted early on in Lotus playing the Astra, says, the reason I got so many kills is because I'm a jet player.
You're looking at a round where very unlucky for Tommy Gunn, right? Like you know there's a note in there. It was a really good play. Honestly, that was one of the best adaptations we've seen come out of Florida Blue. where we saw a very big
always
lack
Tommy.
of that
Yeah.
on our first map, and then a much better job in the second, but still wasn't like game changing.
Yeah.
They brought their own Odin. They sprayed through the wall that they know Tommy Gun goes to, and they punished them for that. They knew it was coming. They've been facing it. They whip it out in OT to try and shock you, and it was just enough to get that early start. A second player funnels out. What is Civ doing? Where are you going inside B main? You just lost Tommy Boy. You know that everyone there is just waiting for the prime opportunity because somebody had to clear the recon bolts while that Odin was firing back. So you know there's two players at a minimum, and you're still ego swinging that.
Well,
You give up a kill there, they're rushing your B site. Was that the play the whole time for Polar behind? I'm not sure, but Polar, oh my goodness. You blink and you miss it. Too many highlights to just talk about at the end of the day for the whole series. Dallas, you'll see them on our socials. I'm calling out our social media manager. You better be putting these out on the socials because there are way too many things here that these players need to have highlighted and showcased. Maybe just don't show the 4v1s.
yeah, I mean, it's those situations. I mean, that was another 4v1 though, regardless. I mean, it was just one to where where everybody was actually in their spot though, all things considered. I mean, you talk about the two players and you say, there's at least two players there. That mentality works into the side of the field. You say that there's always at least probably a player holding that door, covering that Odin just in case somebody does sneak by any chance. And even then, whether it's an operator holding the angle more aggressively through that crack, or whether it's somebody with a Vandal kind of holding that cubby, there's usually two players stationed. You'll have one maybe back towards Boathouse, or maybe one towards Market, or you'll have three players allocated on the other side of the map, and maybe a KJ will be holding that alarm bot in the middle. None of that was the case. You're saying, when is there ever a third player right there in A main? Rarely ever. So I think honestly, it was just more kind of two kills goes off, Monkey Neuron starts sparking up and saying we press W. And I mean, 9 times out of 10 that works. But no, it's those small little adjustments, those small little crevices, just kind of holes that are showing up. And it's not something that even there, I would say by design. Obviously, nobody's saying we're expecting Polar to get 4 kills in a round like this. If that was to happen, if you could consistently gamble on a player, that guy is getting paid more money than any other player ever. I mean, that guy's going to be greater than Faker. Give him 2 weeks. But that's just not the case there. It's a little bit awkward there for Florida Blue as in terms of a result. But regardless, seeing what they've done to Oklahoma, I think Oklahoma is going to be one of more of the kind of bigger seeds and bigger opponents, I would say, of their group and of their area. So knowing that Florida Blue is able to kind of hold up to them, and keep in mind they are a secondary roster for Florida, that looks good not only for Orange, but for everybody else to say, and look, they look difficult in some areas, but honestly, there's a lot of things you can really make use of here.
Yeah, Florida Blue, we've said it before, secondary team for Florida. They placed at the same level. They made it as far as their primary roster did in playoffs in our previous split,
More of
right?
a brother team or a twin team, I would say, than a secondary.
But this is also a team that, Dallas, if I'm correct here, has 2 new players into the roster. If I click the 2 different names that at least, Valorant players, they change it every week, but 2 different names on their roster than they had previously, right? So they're a team that is also adjusting things and trying to figure out maybe how these players fit into the role and are still looking pretty darn good. The first map, obviously there were things we talked about that could be adjusted upon, but they made a recovery that it wasn't a blowout game. It was a 3-4 round disparaging point, and they had a good start and they just needed to finish it. Second map, Ascent, it's gonna be close, but OT is as close as you can ask for, and the miracle ending, that's not against you guys. That is a play by Polar, and you can't expect it. Just like Dallas said, you're not anticipating the third player. It's not on you. And Oklahoma, they've come into the SCL here for this split, and they're telling everybody here, we know what we're doing. We can play with you. And even though we're fresh meats, we also bite back. And that's going to be it for us here at the SCL. Dallas, any closing words you want to say excitement about Oklahoma? Because, man, they just showed us a game.
I mean, obviously, just props to the guys for showing up here today, making sure they get themselves an entry here for the season, not only just by kind of making it close in some regard, but also making it a win for themselves. So it's good lookings across the board. Excited to see what happens for the rest of the season. And even then, more so know that we got more best of 3s coming up rather than just a best of 1. So that's not only going to create ourselves a more kind of diverse environment in terms of what's actually possible for these players, it's going to set up the LAN at the end of the season as well, because this is where we get to see everything really unfold. That first season was just more of kind of a setup for this. As we kind of climbed through the ranks, sure, we saw the Niners and RG kind of step up and find themselves in a good spot for what will be this summer already. But these teams, honestly, that you can either completely relegate last season by showing that the best of 3s is better than 1 format, but as an Amber Alert goes off on my phone, you can completely relegate the fact that those best of 1s aren't as good as a best of three by showing that the teams that win the best of threes make that many more plays. They have to make that many more instances of impact over the course of a series, and they got to go a lot further just to win it. So we'll see. We got a lot of time to get there, but still, the summer's where it really all ends.
And Dallas, I'll say it. If you're upset with the way that Dallas is saying you're throwing plays, right? He's calling you, calling you Brady, calling you Michigan for it, right? Meet him at LAN. Meet him in person. Come on. You got to make it there, though. That means you got to earn your right to do so. And it's very hard when you didn't have the first split to help you do so. So Oklahoma, step up to the plate. You've already showed us something here. We're looking forward to seeing more of you. And we'll see everyone next week with more Rocket League on Wednesdays and more Valorant here on Thursdays. We'll see you back next week.
Days of light when the world is getting darker. I have a dream where love's the only side. So take my hand, join the army of the shadows. Going harder, we are more than numbers, standing in the shade. Going louder, we are all one color, standing in the way. Join the army of the shadow. Join the army of the shadow. Join the army of the shadows, shadows, shadows. Join the army of the shadows. Join the army of the shadows. Going harder, we are more than numbers, standing in the shade. Going louder, we are all one color, standing in the way.